Shalom, beloveds of the King. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Here we are once again looking at our very powerful prophetic book of Yeshayahu. And wow, what an amazing chapter we are working through in chapter 24. If there is one chapter that we really need to understand, that is really explaining things to us in depth of end time scenario that basically reflects the beginning, reflects the end, and that is Isaiah chapter 24. Because in this chapter there is a wealth of understanding. There is so much that one needs to unpack that is there, of layers of revelation that the Father is wanting to give us in order for us to understand if this is an end time scripture, if this is an end time prophecy, then we need to understand what it is about and what is the Father trying to tell us in the time that we are in, so that we may understand what it is that is going on in the earth, that we can identify going on around us, that we can rectify, that we must understand that the Father has spoken very clearly that there will only be a remnant that will be left upon the earth. So at the end of the day, we must understand that Father is working in ways that we don't quite understand. And if we really look throughout this Bible, the Father has always had a remnant of people. But we try and look at things through our own ideas and through our own perspectives. But that is why he clearly says in Isaiah chapter 53, your ways are not my ways and your thoughts are not my thoughts, because his ways is definitely not the way. We cannot think how Abba Yahuwah thinks, because he is the great I am, and he is the one who has created all things. He is the great creator of all things. And who are we to be able to try put him in a box and want to dictate to him how he should run his creation? No, we need to try and humble ourselves and truly come to a place of humility so that we can understand things from the Father's perspective and know what is on his heart. Let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you. I thank you for the deep revelation of what you are sharing with us in this chapter 24. I thank you, Father, for the grace that we have of being able to have been given such a mighty prophet like Yeshayahu, that was able to prophetically speak thousands of years ago, but that this can speak to us and give us revelation in this very hour, so that we may understand the things that are to come, so that we would not be caught unawares in any way of the things that are coming upon the earth, but that we should prepare ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, knowing that the days that we live in are truly evil. But we are being called to be those that will draw closer to you in spirit and in truth. And so I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that you alone will be able to come and speak to my mind and speak to my heart, the very oracles that will come from your heart. May you open up the mind of our understanding so that we may be able to understand what your purposes and plans are for this time that we find ourselves in, where Yeshayahu was already prophesying this prophecy thousands of years ago. But just like the eunuch, at the appointed time, the eunuch was reading the scriptures in Isaiah, not understanding what was written there. And there Philip came to open up the scriptures so that the Ethiopian man would have been able to receive his Messiah and to be able to have salvation. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I pray that just like Philip was able to open up the scriptures to the eunuch, to that Ethiopian eunuch, I pray that you will open up these scriptures to us. In Yahushua's name I pray this. Amen. And so praise Abba Yahuwah, were looking at part 1, where we really had to go deep in part 1 because we really wanted to understand what the Father is saying. We spend so much time in just those few verses. But those few verses were so important because we needed to understand what exactly the Father is trying to be able to show us of these end times, to be able to open up to us, to understand our rebellion, to understand why is mankind going to be destroyed? Why is there coming a destruction upon mankind? And that is because we have transgressed. We have transgressed your Torah. We have defiled. The whole earth is under the defilement of its inhabitants. We have not sought your way. We do not do things in your way. And so that is why right now we are in a time that we need to be able to know truth, because it is only the truth that is going to set us free. So let us continue to read our scriptures as we are going to proceed to be able to read Proverbs chapter 10. So for those that are in this position where you are still holding on to this doctrine that they've told you that you are going to be removed out of here because of a rapture, and you're going to fly out of here on the wings, and you're going to be removed from this earth because you're going to be raptured. I just want to bring you to 2 scriptures in Proverbs, because you see, it's difficult to be able to speak to people that have a mindset that is still a mindset that is made up of many deceptive doctrines. And unless we start to bring the truth, and unless we start to break down all these doctrines of demons that have led Abba Yahuwah's people astray, that is why people are where they are, because they keep listening to deceptive doctrines. And that is why Matthew chapter 24, Yeshua tells you 3 times, let no one deceive you. But he also tells you, let no one lead you astray. Let no one come and lead you in the wrong way, to bring you from the path where you are walking the straight and narrow path, and then they lead you astray by these doctrines of demons that come to be able to sow destructive heresies. And that is why we need to know truth. And that's why the truth of the word must be spoken. And that is the mandate that I have, to be able to speak and teach truth. So let's go and look at Proverbs chapter 2, from 21 to 22. Listen to what he says. For the straight shall dwell in the earth. The straight shall dwell in the earth, and the perfect be left in it. The same as Noah was perfect in his generation. Noah was a righteous man. Noah walked with Yahuwah, and Noah was perfect. And you can go read that in Genesis 6 verses 9. The Father clearly said Noah was a righteous man. Noah was perfect in his generation. Noah walked with Yahuwah. Let me read it. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahuwah. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Noah walked with Eluah. So the Father is wanting a people that will be a righteous people, a people that will be perfect, a people that walk with him. So he says, the perfect will be left in it, but the wrong shall be cut off from the earth. So the wrong are going to be plucked out of the earth, and the treacherous ones plucked out of it. So do you understand? Do you understand why the Father is saying that, he's going to bring destruction? Those that are left in it are the righteous, and the righteous will be few. And that is what we looked at. So then, if we have a look in Proverbs 10, verse 30, let's go to Proverbs 10, verse 30, and it says, the righteous is never shaken, while the wrong shall not dwell in the earth. Do you see? The righteous is never shaken. So if you walk righteous, set apart unto the Father, keeping his ordinance, keeping his Torah, keeping his laws, keeping his precepts, keeping his ordinances, his timelines of what he wants, his timetable, his things, keeping his Sabbaths, keeping his feasts, not keeping Sunday church, because he never wanted Sunday church. He says, you to keep the Sabbath. So you are to have Sabbath church, not Sunday church, bringing glory to sun God worship. So everything is perverted. Not keeping Christmas and Easter and all these other feasts that man has made out of their hands, out of their own doing, and changed the ways of the Father, which is what we read. And that's why it says, the righteous is never shaken, while the wrong shall not dwell in the earth. The wrong are not going to dwell in the earth, because why? They're going to be removed. And so that is why he says, they changed the law, and they've broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore, a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. So understand, when the curse comes upon the earth, even the righteous are still there. We're still in this earth. We still suffer the consequences of what's going on this earth, whether we like it or whether we don't. When there's earthquakes and when there's all this destruction going on, we are still affected by the things that are going on in the earth. But the Father protects us and he keeps us. He says, I will keep you. He doesn't say I will remove you. He says, I will keep you. I will watch over you. But it doesn't mean to say that we are not affected by the destruction that is on the earth. The fact that they are polluting our planet is affecting the righteous as much as it's affecting the wicked. And we will understand this. We will understand this by the time we get to chapter 26, when we understand why the Father brings the judgments. And so we now read verse 7, and now we're going to embark on a foundation that we need to lay here. And he says, the new wine shall fail, the vine shall languish, all those glad at heart shall sigh. So the vine shall fail. So basically, the new wine that is to be given shall fail. Now, we are going to look at this in two ways. The first way we're going to look at it is that the new wine, because of the vineyards that are not going to be giving the wine, there isn't going to be any wine. There isn't going to be any grape juice that eventually is going to give them the wine that they desire. But at the same time, when he says the new wine has failed, what has failed of the new wine? Because you see, the vine shall languish. All those glad at heart shall sigh. Why? Because what are they glad at heart from? They're glad at heart because of the intoxication of their wine that they want to drink. And we are going to lay a foundation here today. Because, my goodness, if there is one thing that the world is under the greatest intoxication of, and that is alcohol. And we're really going to have to lay down a foundation today, because this is end times. And we are going to understand that in the end of the days right now, we are going to find more and more people turning to the bottle, turning to alcohol as their source of comfort. They desire that, then they desire more of the Father. And yet at the end of the day, we are going to understand the difference between the Father's way, which is set apart and holy, and when he speaks about the earth and the defilement of the earth, and when he speaks about destruction, he's going to take it to drunkenness, which means everything to do with the flesh, everything to do with sin and wickedness is drunkenness. And this is the intoxication of wine. And so the Father as I really have had to spend time with these scriptures, the Father has showed me, and this is very, very, very important, and it's a revelation that the Father has already given last year, as really when we started looking deep into the book of Genesis, and when we started working through the first few chapters of Genesis. And what was the first sin that came upon the new earth, when there was a new earth after the flood? And so we are going to have a look at this new earth flood. So we're going to look at Genesis chapter 9, 20 to 21, and it says, and Noah, a man of the soil. So you see, Noah was a man that came from the flesh, and that's why he's saying a man of the soil. He's reminding us that this is Noah of the soil. He comes from the dust of the earth, and it's his flesh nature, from that soil that he comes from, that's going to be his downfall. Because you see, that is why he truly wants us to be able to crucify our flesh nature on a daily basis. Because it's our flesh nature of the soil that makes us sin. Now listen to what he says. Noah, a man of the soil, began and planted a vineyard. Understand, there's just been a new earth. They've just come out. In chapter 8, they have just come out of the ark. And it says in verse 14, and in the second new moon, verse 14 of chapter 8, it says, and in the second new moon, on the 27th day of the new moon, the earth was dry, and Elohim spoke to Noah, saying, go out of the ark, and you and your wife, and your sons' wives, and you bring out with you every life from all flesh that is with you, of the birds, of the cattle, and the creeping creatures, and the creeping creatures on the earth, and let them teem on the earth, and bear and increase on the earth. So, what is the first thing that Noah does? In verse 20, Noah builds a slaughter place and took every clean beast of every clean bird and offered ascending offerings on the slaughter place. So he brings worship to the Father. But now he starts to plant. And what is one of the first things he wants to plant? A vineyard. He starts to plant a vineyard. And that's why he says, a man of the soil. Because the man of the soil is wanting a vineyard. Because you see, a vineyard is supposed to bring you nice grape juice. Nice wine that is grape juice wine, that is not going to have intoxication in it. And what happens? So it says, the man of the soil began and planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his true brothers outside. So do you see what happens? The very first sin that enters into this new earth that the Father has just washed. He's just cleansed it and purged it and purified it. And Noah has just sent worship and absolute, worship up to the Father. And what does he do? He's a man of the earth. You see, he's the man of the soil, because his soiled flesh goes and plants a vineyard. And instead of him drinking the new wine, just the new wine, you see, the new wine, when it talks about the new wine is, it's fresh, it's new, it's freshly pressed wine, it's fresh grape juice as just squeezed out, not fermented wine, but new sweet wine. That is the purest grape juice that you can get. And instead of him drinking this, no, he wanted the one that brings fermentation, that now brings a sin, because it uncovered him. And this is where man then fell again with nakedness and uncoveredness and lewdness and everything that is going to bring defilement of our flesh man. It's going to take this soil, this piece of soil that we are a soil, we are a garden. And instead of this garden producing beautiful fruit for the Father to eat, it's going to produce everything that is wickedness. It brings debauchery, it brings lust, it brings fornication, it brings drunkenness, it brings the lust that the flesh wants of enjoyment of the pleasures of this world. And it doesn't want the worship of Yahuwah. So we have to build a foundation here, because this is everything of what we're going to see is going to come out of this chapter as we continue to read. So we're now going to have a look at Matthew chapter 7 verses 13. We read what new wine is. And then if we go look at Luke chapter 5, so the new wine is the freshly squeezed, it's the freshly pressed wine, fresh grape juice. It's a wine that does not have fermentation. It doesn't have an intoxication in it. It hasn't changed its state. It's not changed the original form. Because remember, the Father created something in its original form. Grapes that we eat, juice that we drink. But man has altered it to what they wanted, an intoxication thing. So, we go look at Luke chapter 4. And in Luke chapter 5, from verses 37, this is Yeshua speaking. Now remember, I have already done a teaching where I said the first sin that came upon the earth after Noah came onto the earth was getting drunk. Drunkenness. What was the very first miracle that Yeshua does to bring restoration? He turns water into wine and gives them a new wine, a wine that is the purest grape juice, the wine that is to be able to be set apart and holy, which will eventually become the blood that he's going to share of the grape juice, the blood, when he sits at the table and he breaks bread and he drinks the cup of the grape juice. It was not wine, it was grape juice. And he says, as often as you do this in remembrance of me. So he has come to set us apart so that we do not go into the flesh man, flesh nature, and his blood has paid the price for us to live in a righteous way, to live in a set apart way, to bring glory and honor to the Father and not live in our fallen nature way. So now he says in verse 37, no one puts new wine in old wineskins, otherwise the new wine shall burst the wineskins and run out, and the wineskins shall be ruined. But new wine is put in fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. So you see, you cannot put a new wine, freshly squeezed grape juice that's just been squeezed, and go put it in a wineskins that's fermented. That's already got the smell, that just the smell of wine, when it has been fermented for a long time, will almost intoxicate you to your mind. But new wine is put in fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. And no one, now listen to what he says, and no one, having drank old wine, immediately desires new wine. For he says the old is better. And this is exactly what Yeshua is referring to. He's saying, you see, when you have had the taste of alcohol and intoxication, of the fornication of the flesh, and the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life, and the lust of the eyes, and everything that this world is offering you, you don't automatically want to die in your flesh man and follow Yeshua. Because you don't want to give up that which your flesh enjoys. You see, wine is everything about enjoyment. I want to sit down and enjoy a little glass of wine. I want to enjoy my party with my little glass of wine and my alcohol and my, whatever alcohol it is that you want to drink. Because it's part of enjoyment, and we're going to see this. So let us continue to read Isaiah so we can really get the understanding. The joy of the tambourine shall cease, and the noise of those who rejoice shall end. The joy of the lyre shall cease. So you see, all of this enjoyment, all of this lusts of the flesh, and all this that we've enjoyed in life is going to cease. Why? Because the judgment of the Father, the curse, is going to consume the earth. Now look, no more do they drink wine with a song. You see, because wine is drank with enjoyment. Wine is drank with enjoying ourselves. It's a relaxation. How many people, I'm hearing more and more people that are starting to turn to wine, and it's coming in my life with people that is around me, not directly around me, but family members. And that all of a sudden are turning to the bottle as a source of comfort because they don't know how to cope with life. So whenever you go through a stressful time in your life, it's very easy to just relax, especially when you come through a hard day and you're going to be able to have a hard day. The one thing that you want to do is put up your feet, have a nice meal, and enjoy a good glass of wine. Because I can. Because I'm entitled to it. And like I said, I have been in places that people cannot come together. And I'm not talking about non-believers. I'm talking about believers. Those who follow Yeshua, they cannot come together unless they come together around a bottle of wine. They cannot worship the Father and enjoy His presence without having, and where we're going to have a meal, that there wasn't a bottle of wine. I was disgusted when I saw this, because you could have up to 6-7 bottles of wine amongst a bunch of people because they don't know how to come together and not have a bottle of wine. And that's why I say, this is why he's saying, the joy of the tambourine shall cease, the noise of those who rejoice shall end, and the joy of the lyre shall cease. No more do they drink wine with a song. Strong drink is bitter to those who drink it, because now they're not enjoying it anymore. Life is a little bit more difficult now. And now those who enjoyed the song with a glass of wine, it's not there anymore. So they might still have strong drink, but the wine is no longer there because the vine has not given forth its wine. And now listen to what he says. The deserted city shall be broken down. Every house shall be shut. No one enters. So the deserted city. So the cities are deserted because the people have died. And the cities are deserted. And shall be broken down. Every house shall be shut. No one enters. Why is the houses shut? Because of all the looting that's going to go on in the cities. Understand, if they know that you've maybe got alcohol in your house, or they know that you got food in your house, they might just come and ransack it in order to be able to get what they want. Because these will be like vicious people in the street. Because listen to what it says in verse 11. There is a crying for wine in the streets. Do you understand where we are today? Do you understand? This is where we are today. Those people that do not want to give up their alcohol, it's because they're already so ingrained into the lust of the world. The lust of the world that needs to give them that alcohol that is basically part of their enjoyment, which is really a lust of the flesh. And understand that is part of the fallen nature of man. That is part of our soiled nature. That is not the new wine that Yahushua has come to give us, because the new wine that Yeshua has come to give us, that Yahushua has given us, is a new wine that is not, it's the grape juice that is not with intoxication, that's going to be able to bring us an enjoyment in our flesh. He is the enjoyment that we are to enjoy. He's the one who will energize us and give us this enjoyment without any intoxication. Do you understand? That is the new wine that Yahushua came to give us. He came to give us a new wine that was going to take us out of everything that gives us an enjoyment of the lust of the flesh. He wants us to enjoy His presence without us having to have our mind. You know, one glass of wine is already just enough to relax your body. It's not to say that it's going to make you drunk, but it's to relax you. It's to relax your body. It's to be able to be in that place of saying, wow, let me just unwind and enjoy my little glass of wine, or 2 or 3, because some people can do 3. I couldn't even do 1 in my time. I was never a person who ever really drank wine, because it would go straight to my head. And I think that was already Father's protection of me in my day, already then, when I wasn't even saved. Understand, I only got saved at the age of 30. So it's not like I didn't live my life. I certainly did. And so they are crying for wine in the streets. All joy be darkened. You see, so what gave them joy? The wine that they drank. And that's why I'm saying believers nowadays do not know how to come together without their wine, because that's what gives them joy. I thought it was the presence of the Father. I thought it was the Ruach of the Father that fills us, that brings us the joy everlasting joy that we need, being in His presence without being intoxicated by anything. The gladness of the earth shall be gone. So make a note of this, because this is what you're going to see. And you don't even need to go very far. Yeah, in this country alone, maybe in some countries they did not do away with the alcohol, but in this country they did away with alcohol for months. And if you really wanted to see where people were, or where we are, where this is concerned, you know, when they opened up the next day, they were going to open up the bottle stores, the liquor stores, the stores of the spirits. Because if you open yourself up to this, you get spirits in you. That's definitely not the Spirit of the Father. That's why it's called. I was walking past the shop the other day, and I walked past the liquor store, and I said, and it says, and it sells wine and beer and spirits. And I thought, yes, you see, that's exactly what it is. We open up ourselves to other spirits apart from the Spirit of the Father. I'm going to go hard on this, because we must understand this was the very first sin that came upon the earth. And mankind, including believers, do not want to let go of it. And I don't understand how, because when I got saved, from the day I got saved, 22 years ago, more than 22 years ago, believe me when I say to you, that was the first thing that went together with the smoking, was the alcohol. It was all gone, never again to go past my lips. Because now I have received a holy, kadosh, ruach, a Holy Spirit, a kadosh, ruach, a Holy Spirit, not a contaminated, intoxicating spirit. But we must understand these things. And so we continue to read, for thus it is to be in the midst of the earth among the people, like the shaking of an olive tree, like the gleaning of grapes when the grapes harvest is done. So there's only going to be a few left. Because you see, it says the city is left in ruins. There will be destruction all around us, and the gate is stricken with destruction. gladness of the earth is gone, because people can only be glad when they are glad because of the partying, when they party around alcohol. Believe me, go look amongst the young people. Even in this country, they are saying that alcohol is a problem. And that's why I said, look and see. After we had the time of where we had a lockdown and we were not allowed alcohol, a lot of people got it on the black market and they were paying fortunes for it. They didn't even have money for food. They were unemployed, but they found food for alcohol. They found money for alcohol. And then when they finally were going to open up those bottle stores, like I was saying the story, from midnight, people were already lining up outside. It was disgusting. It was disgusting to watch the news and to say, what are all these long queues? People had been queuing up since the early hours of the morning to go and get their drink. Why? Because you see, the flesh cannot do without it. And yet, for all those months, they were weaned from it, which means they had an opportunity to wean themselves off. You know, they say it takes 40 days to basically wean you off something. And we were much longer than that. We had months that the bottle stores were closed. And yeah, they were totally being delivered of it. But now they were standing queue. Goes with the scripture of verse 11. There is crying for wine in the streets. All joy shall be darkened. The gladness of the earth shall be gone, because they couldn't have their intoxications. So there will be, for thus it will be in the midst of the earth among the peoples, like the shaking of an olive tree, like the gleaning of grapes when the grapes harvest is done. They lift up their voice. So you see, there will only be few left, but the few that are left, listen to what they do. They lift up their voice. They sing of the excellency of Yahuwah. They shall cry aloud from the sea. So you see, they have found a new joy. They have found a joy. Those that are remaining on the earth, those that are the righteous, those that are the perfect, those that walk with Yahuwah, they know how to find joy without having to have wine or strong drink. They find it in His presence. They find it in Him. Joy comes from within. Joy does not come from anything that you take from the outside. Joy is within you. There is joy. Joy is something that raises up within you, because it's from the presence of the Father that you carry within you. Joy is not because of your happenings around you. Your happenings give you happiness, but joy comes from within. Your happenings, what goes on around you, is what's going to make you happy or sad. But joy is an everlasting thing that comes from within. Nothing can give you joy, because joy comes from within. It's the Father's presence that gives you joy, but it's not the happenings around you that give you joy. That's why it's a choice to be in joy, because joy comes from within, because it's the Father's presence. It comes from the Father. It comes from within. So they lift up their voice and they sing of the excellency of Yahuwah. They shall cry aloud from the sea. Therefore praise Yahuwah in the east, the name of Eluah of Israel in the coastlands, the name of Yahuwah, Eluah of Israel in the coastlands of the sea. The name of Yahuwah is going to be exalted at that time, especially by His set apart ones, especially by those that are set apart unto Him. For from the ends of the earth we shall hear songs. So you see, who are those that are going to be singing the songs? Who are those? Who are those singing the songs? Certainly not that are those that are singing the songs out of, those that are coming that are of the alcohol, because it's not going to be there. And so he says, from the ends of the earth we shall hear songs, splendor to the righteous one. But I say, waste away, I waste away, woe to me. The treacherous betray with treachery, and treacherous betray. You see, so even though the one that is trying to serve the Father, the one that's going to be on the earth seeking the Father, there will be the wicked all around them that are still treacherous and filled with wickedness that will be trying to kill us. And this was the dream that I had 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, when I had this dream where I saw in the streets, people had brought their beds into the street. People were having orgies in the streets. It was on a bed, men, women, everything together. I can't even explain to you what the earth looked like that I saw in a dream 20 years ago. And I heard a prophet the other day absolutely confirming the very thing that the Father showed her in a vision was what the dream that I had. Or she either had a dream or a vision that, I think it was a dream that, like I had 20 years ago, that this is how I saw the world at the end. That people would be absolutely having sex in the streets, that there was no more, there were no more moral values, there was nothing. It was dark, it was just bonfires everywhere, there was total darkness, and I am running for my life because of demons that were chasing me. And then people were trying to grab me to bring me into their orgies and to their wild parties that they were having. And so we have a look and we continue to read. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitants of the earth. So do you see, if you are not one who is serving the Father, you will have fear, and it will be like you are in the pit of the deep, of the hell of the earth. And the snare upon you, O inhabitant of the earth. And no matter what you do, you will be ensnared by the destruction that will be around you if you are not one that has turned to the Father. And it shall be that he who flees from the noise of the fear falls into the pit. And he who comes up from the midst of the pit is caught in the snare. So, do you understand? You cannot run. No one will be able to escape the terror that will be upon the earth. No one will be able to escape. You cannot escape the destruction. When there is a earthquake coming, and when you see that earthquake opening up, like if you've ever watched that movie, St. Andreas, and then that earthquake is opening and everything is falling around you, you can run, but you cannot hide. And the only protection that we have is the protection of the Father. When a tsunami comes, it takes everything in its way. It's destruction, and nobody can run from a tsunami. If it is there, and you are on that, if you are in its way, it's going to take you. And the only thing that you can do is at that very moment, if you are caught in anything, you cannot run from the destruction that will be upon the earth. You can only be in the center of a storm, and the center of the storm is the safest place in a storm. It's in the eye of the storm, and we need to be in the center of the Father's will, because only in the center of the Father's will is where you are protected. That's the only place to be. Protected. So, for the windows from on high shall be opened, and the foundations of the earth be shaken. So the earth is going to be shaken. The windows from on high shall be opened. Now, if we have a look at Genesis chapter 7, so we look at Genesis chapter 7, and in Genesis chapter 7 we saw how the earth shook. Remember, they entered into the ark, and these people were still around them, and only those that are in the ark are protected. So I want you to understand, there is a protection for those that will be in Yahuwah. The righteous shall be protected. The set-apart ones, Abba holds them in the palm of his hand. There might be some that are going to die as martyrs, but there are others that the Father will protect. We do not know. We do not know. We do not know. The only thing that we can do is keep our eyes focused on our King. lift up your eyes. Where does your help come from? Your help comes from the Yahuwah, the creator of heaven and earth. And so it says in verses 10, Genesis chapter 7, verses 10, and it came to be that after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth, and in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second new moon, the 17th day of the new moon, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And Yah is saying, for the windows from on high shall be opened, and the fountains of the earth be shaken, as the Father is going to shake heaven and earth. And the earth shall be utterly broken. The earth shall be completely shattered. The earth shall be fiercely shaken. So understand, the earth is going to shake, and its inhabitants is shaking with it. And now look at how he compares the earth. How amazing, because everything goes back to the sin that came upon the earth. And the earth shall stagger like a drunkard, and it shall totter like a hut, and its transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. So understand, its transgression, so we have transgressed to such a degree. What is its transgression? We have done away with, it's been perished, it's turned away. The transgression of what we've turned away from everything that was pure and holy before the Father, that was set apart before the Father. And it's once again being compared to what? It is being compared to a drunkard. It's being compared to the destruction of a drunkard. Now let's go and read Jeremiah chapter 25. Jeremiah chapter 25 verses 15 to 16, it says, for thus says Yahuwah, Eluah of Israel. For thus says Yahuwah, Eluah of Israel, to me, take this wine cup of wrath. Now you see, it's interesting. What is the cup of the wrath of the Father? Again, it's compared to wine. Again, it's compared to the intoxication of wine. But then people want me to believe that fermented wine is a good thing in the eyes of the Father. Do you see where we are? We call what is evil good and what is good evil. Father, every time he wants to speak about the judgments, he's bringing this wine. Now he's saying the earth is like a drunkard person, one who is intoxicated with alcohol. And now it says, for thus said Yahuwah of Israel to me, take this wine cup of wrath from my hand, and make all the nations to whom I send you drink it, and they shall drink and shake and go mad because of the sword that I am sending among them. Verse 17, and then I took the cup from the hand of Yahuwah and made all the nations drink to whom Yahuwah had sent me. So understand, Father's destruction is coming, and he is bringing and he's explaining this destruction as much as what he's speaking about drunkenness. And he's saying, give this cup of wine of the judgments and the destruction of my wrath. And so then if we go look at Revelation chapter 17, let's go look at Revelation chapter 17. What does he say in Revelation chapter 17? What does he compare it to again? So in Revelation chapter 17, what does he say? He says, and one of the 7 messengers, Revelation 17 verses 1 and 2, and one of the 7 messengers who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying to come, said to me, come, I shall show you the judgment of the great whore sitting on many waters, with whom the sovereigns of the earth committed whoring, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her whoring. So you see, the Father is allowing the nations to drink. Oh, they are drinking, and they are becoming more and more drunk. they are more and more intoxicating themselves. So you must understand, you are either drinking from the intoxication that the world has got to give you, or you are either drinking from the set-apart wine of the no fermentation that the Father wants you to drink, because he says, be set apart as I'm set apart. Be holy as I'm holy. Be set apart as I'm set apart. And so he turns around and he says, we continue to read in Isaiah, and in Isaiah chapter 24, verses 21, it says, and in that day it shall be that Yahuwah punishes on high the host of the exalted ones on the earth and the sovereigns of the earth. So he's going to punish the exalted ones, and he's going to punish the sovereigns of the earth. So if we have a look at Revelation chapter 18, let's go look at Revelation chapter 18. Revelation chapter 18 verses 2 to 3, and it says, and he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place for the demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, and the haunt of every unclean and hated bird. So you see, now he's talking about the unclean things. And wine is, he says, that intoxicated wine, he sees it as unclean. And that's why he's telling them to drink of the wine of the intoxication. And they are drinking the wine of the flesh things, of the lusts of the flesh. Because that's why when he spoke about Noah, when Noah went to be able to make a vineyard, he says, and he was from the soil. Because it's his flesh nature. And every unclean spirit and a haunt of every unclean and hated bird, because all the nations that drank of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of a riotous living, through the power of their excessive luxuries living upon the earth. And I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. And so he's going to judge. And that is why in Revelation chapter 6, we go to Revelation chapter 6 and we go to verses 12 and 17, and it says, and I looked, and when he opened the sixth seal, and I saw a great earthquake come to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the hair and the moon became as blood, and the stars of the heavens fell on the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind, and the heavens departed like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the sovereigns of the earth, and the great ones, and the rich ones, and the commanders, and the mighty, and every slave, and every free one hid themselves in the caves, in the rocks of the mountains, and said, the mountains and the rocks fall on us, and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb, because the day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? So do you see, no one is going to hide from that which is going to come upon them. And so he speaks, it's the unclean, everything that's unclean. So what do we see? So is this alcohol clean? So let's go look at Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 10, and let's see what he calls unclean. So let's see what he says fermented wine is. Let's see what he calls wine with alcohol in it, and every other kind of alcohol. Let's see what he calls it. And Yahuwah spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die. A law forever throughout your generations. So if you wanted to be a priest and a set apart one for the Father, he saw fermented wine, he saw wine that has got alcohol in it, and strong drink, your beers and your spirits and everything else. All of it is spirits at the end of the day, because all of it, alcohol is spirits anyway. All of that has alcohol in it, and your ciders that with alcohol, and all these juices that they give you now, they give you these ciders and they give you these other drinks it's like people are drinking cold drink, and that's why the children are getting addicted to the stuff, because it tastes like cold drink, but it has alcohol in it to intoxicate you. So as to make a distinction between the set apart, now listen to what he says, as to make a distinction, so he's making a distinction between the set apart and the profane, between the unclean and the clean. So he says that is unclean. Pure grape juice is clean, but fermented grape juice is unclean. Wine that is got alcohol in it is unclean. And to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahuwah has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. So you are to teach them the difference between what is unclean and what is clean. And this is going to be important because we're going to look at this. So we're going to finish off now, Isaiah 24. Let's start to finish off with Isaiah. Let's go look. So, continue to read. And he says, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison and be punished after many days. So you see, they are going to be put in the pit. They are going to be put in the pit of hell, and they are going to be judged. All these people that have been seeking the ways of the world and the lusts of the flesh, they are going to be put in the pit. So all these people doing destruction upon the earth, they do not want to follow the Father. They do not want to be set apart. So we look and see in Revelation chapter 20. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20. I know that I'm almost like a broken record that has to speak the same thing. But you know, there's going to come a day where finally, out of one teaching, maybe one person is going to say, I finally get it. I didn't get it before, but maybe with this one I got it. So the Father keeps me having to repeat, because you see, it's until the revelation comes in your heart when you're finally going to say, I get it. I'm going to turn. I'm not going to do this anymore. Revelation chapter 20 says, verse 1, and I saw a messenger coming down from the heavens, having the key to the pit of the deep and the great chain in his hand. And he seized the dragon and the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the pit of the deep and shut him up and set a seal on him, so that he should lead the nations no more astray, until the 1,000 years were ended, and after that he has to be released for a little while. So understand something. It said, and they shall be gathered together, so the sovereigns of the earth that have committed all this riotous living, and that has brought the people and this harlotry and everything that's brought the people into destruction, and that's led the people of Yahuwah astray, they shall be put into the pit of the deep, and they shall be gathered together as the prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison and be punished after many days. And then, remember where he says in verse 21, and in that day it shall be that Yahuwah punishes on high the host of the exalted ones on the earth, and the sovereigns of the earth. So the sovereigns of the earth are these merchants that's spoken of in Revelation chapter 18, these merchants that have led the people astray. Because look and see what he says in Revelation chapter 18, verse 23, and the lamp and the light of the lamp shall not shine in you any more at all, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you any more at all. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, for by your drug sorceries all the nations were led astray. So the merchants of the earth led them astray. In Revelation chapter 9, it says, Revelation chapter 9, and it turns around and it says, and saying from verses 14, and saying to the sixth messenger who has the trumpet, release the four messengers, those having been bound at the great river Euphrates, and the four messengers, those having been prepared for the hour, the day, and the month, and the year, were released to kill a third of mankind. And the number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million, and I heard the number of them, and this is how I saw the horses. And now go down to verses 18. And a third of mankind was killed by these three plagues, but by the fire, the smoke, and the sulfur which came out of their mouths. For the authority of the horses in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm. But listen to how sad it is. And the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, and they should not worship the demons and the idols of gold and of silver and of brass, because it's all about the riches of this world, because that is what leads the people. Remember, you cannot serve two masters. You're either going to serve the Father or you're going to serve riches. And the idols of gold and silver and brass and of stone and of wood, which are neither able to see nor to hear nor to walk. And they did not repent of their murders, nor of their drug sorceries, nor of their whorings, nor of their thefts. And we understand the drug sorcery being the pharmakia, that at the moment is the witchcraft, and this is what the druggists, the pharmacists are busy having to be able to lead all the nations astray with this. And so we read Isaiah chapter 24, we end off verse 23, and it says, and the moon shall blush, and the sun shall be ashamed. For Yahuwah of hosts shall reign on Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem, and before his elders in esteem. Now, wow, this is now when Yeshua is going to reign and rule. And we have a look at Revelation 21, verse 23 to 27, and it says, and the city had no need of sun, nor of moon, to shine in it, for the esteem of Eloah lightened it, and the Lamb is its lamp. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the sovereigns of the earth bring their esteem into it. So you see, the sovereigns that have repented and turned from the Father shall bring their esteem. The sovereigns that are the righteous sovereigns, those that love Yahuwah above the lusts of the flesh and the pride of life and all that this world has to give them. Because why? If we have a look about, I forgot one scripture, and I'm just going to read it from John, just coming to me. Because why? Who are these people? Who are these people? And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the sovereigns of the earth bring their esteem into it. So what does the Father say to us in 1 John chapter 2 verses 15? Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world, because if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passes away, and the lust of it, but the one doing the desire of Yahuwah remains forever. Little children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that the anti-Messiah is coming, even now many anti-Messiahs have come. And this is what we must understand. The anti-Messiahs are even telling us that Messiah Yahushua is not the deity. He is not the Father. He is not to be worshipped. And this is coming directly out of the Torah movement amongst those that are Torah teachers. And that is why we best be very careful who we listen to, who's going to lead us astray in these last days, because they will start to take away the deity of Messiah. Why did they kill him? Why did they kill him? Because he exalted himself to say, I am Yahuwah. The Father and I are one. And they couldn't accept it. They couldn't accept it. They killed him because he said he was the Son of Yahuwah. He said he was Yahuwah made manifest in the flesh. And this is the very thing that is being denied today, beloveds. And so what does he say? And its gates shall not be shut at all by day, for night shall not be there. And they shall bring the esteem and the appreciation of the nations into it. Now please listen to verse 27, because this is very, very key to everything that we have read. And there shall by no means enter into it whatever is unclean. So understand, nothing that is unclean, nothing that he says that is unclean is going to enter into that city. So you see, we should be striving to be set apart. So if we can't let go of those things that is defiling our bodies, this very thing that the Father will say, this wine of intoxication, this thing that he says that is unclean. And then if we are not setting ourselves apart in being able to walk when he says, foods you should eat, foods you shouldn't eat, and setting ourselves apart as clean vessels, set apart, righteous before the Father, then what are we doing? We will be unclean. Neither anyone doing abomination and falsehood. Wow, do you understand why we're going to go deep in this word, and why the Father keeps teaching us more and more truth and more truth and more truth? Because no falsehood is going to enter in there, but only those who are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So understand, for our names to be written in the Lamb's Book of Life, there needs to be nothing unclean. There needs to be nothing of falsehood in there. Because, listen carefully. Blessed are those doing his commandments, chapter 22, verses 14. Blessed are those doing his commandments, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, those who enchant with drugs, drug sorcery, once again, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all those who love and do falsehood. So we have to be lovers of truth, because if not, we will be deceived, and we will not be those that will be able to eat from the tree of life, because he says few are going to be left upon the earth. And so that's why he says, walk out your salvation with fear and trembling, because it's a walk that needs to be walked out so that your name can be written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Walk it out with fear and trembling. So this is a very, very powerful, very, very heart-wrenching chapter that Isaiah, Yeshayahu, has given us, for us to truly humble ourselves and seek Abba Yahuwah. But praise the Father. Father will never bring judgment like this without bringing encouragement. And praise the Father for chapter 25. Chapter 25 is once again now the encouragement and the lightness of who Abba Yahuwah is, because he's a righteous judge. He judges on the one side, but he brings mercy, loving kindness on the other. So may Abba bless you, beloveds of the King. May you continue to lift up your eyes, knowing where your help comes from. Your help comes only from him, the one who created heaven and earth. May Abba bless you. Shalom, shalom.